Our next speaker is Minister Nik Nazmi. I can go and through the long record of his outstanding scholarship and political leadership. I would do the easier thing by offering him the bribe of advising you to go to your neighbor bookstore, pick up the book, Son of Malaysia, read through the first 5 pages and the last 5 pages. If you do not buy the book, there's something wrong with you. So, our next speaker has a very difficult portfolio. The portfolio covers natural resources, environment, and climate. Traditionally, the Natural Resources Ministry is about the exploitation of natural resources for prosperity, a master-slave relationship between man and nature. Environment, it is the part about building peaceful coexistence between man and nature. So we have a person who has been given 2 tasks that are hard to reconcile if you look at the way that things have been done in the past. Luckily, he's guided by the Madani Malaysia principles, which effectively makes him the Minister of Peace, Progress, and Prosperity. Let me explain. It is not just peace between man and man, but also peace between man and nature. And we go beyond peace between man and nature. We also insist on progress between man and nature. The relationship has to be a synergistic one that yields win-win outcomes for both, and hence ensuring the outcome of economic prosperity and sustainability. So may I have the Minister of Peace, Progress, and Prosperity, please.
Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Sri Dr. Jeffrey Cheah, Chair of SDSN Malaysia, Founder and Chairman of ASEAN Way Group and Chancellor of ASEAN Way University, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, President of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, Dr. Rosemary G. Adelin, Under-Secretary for Policy and Planning of the National Economic and Development Authority of the Philippines, Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Razman Hashim, Deputy Chair of the ASEAN Way Group, Professor Sibrandis Popema, President of ASEAN Way University, Professor Elizabeth Lee, CEO of ASEAN Way Education Group, Professor Wu Wing Tai, Vice President for Asia and Head of the KL Office, UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera and a very good morning. I'd like to thank Prof just now for giving a very generous introduction and for trying very hard to sell my book. I think I have to learn from Professor Sachs on how to sell my book better on the market. I'm very pleased to be speaking at the ASEAN Workshop on Sustainable Development 2023, and I would like to thank the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, the Jeffrey Cheah Foundation, and ASLI for not only inviting me to be a panelist but holding for the conference like this in the first place. I don't think it's necessary for us to have a long discussion on why sustainable development matters. The result of us rejecting it would likely mean the end of our survival as a species on this planet. We only have one planet. As has been said many times, addressing climate change and hence its related imperatives, including enshrining sustainable development and a just energy transition, may likely be the greatest challenges of our time. I think what is very apt about this session, converting crisis to opportunity the ASEAN way, And what attracted me to it is that it highlights that countries cannot address climate change or sustainable development in isolation. We are all interconnected, and climate change, as again the saying goes, respects no boundaries. To be sure, ASEAN, since its founding in 1967, helped to ensure peace, neutrality, and connectivity in our region. It can, however, do much more, and it is a fascinating prospect to see it as a possible avenue for us to strengthen sustainable development and win the war against climate change. Make no mistake, ASEAN matters. Southeast Asia is the fulcrum of Asia. We have an unbeatable strategic location, a combined population of nearly 670 million, and a combined GDP of $3 trillion. We are the 5th largest economy in the world, and this is only likely to grow. Thus, there can be no Asian century without Southeast Asia, and there can be no Asian century without a sustainable one. And so, what we in Southeast Asia fail or succeed to do when it comes to sustainable development will have an Asian-wide, if not global, implications. Today, therefore, I'd like to spend just a short time on what Malaysia has done with regards to sustainable development, and then say a few things about what can be done on an ASEAN-wide scale. Malaysia has, one, pledged in our nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 45% to 2030. Two, we have also announced under the 12th Malaysia Plan that the country will seek to achieve net zero emissions earliest by 2050. Three, we are developing a long-term low emissions development strategy to provide context for long-term climate planning, development priorities, vision, and future development direction. Fourth, we are also working hard on a Climate Change Act, which will establish a legal framework on climate change mitigation and compliance mechanisms. We are also, finally, after many, many years and many, many ministers, we are going to introduce this year an Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act with the aim of regulating energy efficiency and conservation practices. We talk a lot about clean sources of renewable energy, but at the other end of the equation is also about using our energy efficiently. Six, the NRECC has also collaborated with the International Renewable Energy Agency to publish Malaysia Energy Transition Outlook, MITO, which explores the potential long-term energy pathway for our country to attain a cleaner and more sustainable energy system. Seventh, Malaysia's generation capacity for renewable energy will be increased to create new economic opportunities, where by 2050, this new government has announced we are targeting 70% of energy capacity to come from renewable energy. Next, we also have allowed the cross-border renewable energy trading. This is the decision that we made in May 2023, and this will allow us to get the scale of renewable energy and to explore new technologies which are too expensive for our current tariffs, things like battery storage and other forms of new technology which we believe can be economical once we are allowed to sell our renewable energy abroad. And last but not least, we are also talking about the National Energy Transition Roadmap, and the first phase will be launched next week with key flagship projects where the private sector can participate in order for us to accelerate our energy transition. In terms of ASEAN, it should be stressed that the above-mentioned cross-border renewable energy trading is part of our contribution to the creation of the long-awaited ASEAN power grid. We know that with more renewable energy, we need a better and much more connected grid across the region. That's the experience of Europe. We've seen that. Currently, Malaysia and Singapore are buying hydroelectricity from Laos via Thailand, but there are so many more opportunities. Interconnection between the peninsula and Sumatra, interconnection, the long-awaited interconnection between Sarawak and Peninsula. Sarawak is already supplying energy to Kalimantan in Indonesia, and now with the upcoming creation of the new capital city in Kalimantan, these are all opportunities for ASEAN to be connected, and Malaysia is at the strategic location of being at the center of all this. At the same time, ASEAN itself should be doing more in terms of RE. We know that some countries have been taking the lead in these matters. Philippines, for example, is one of the countries that has the largest amount of battery storage in the region. And one of the things that has helped the Philippines, I think, is because the tariffs are such that makes it economical for them to pursue that. Vietnam, we know, has gone very far in terms of solar energy. And in terms of capacity or potential capacity, ASEAN has the potential to generate 800 gigawatts of solar energy, 300 gigawatts of wind energy, and 200 gigawatts of hydroelectricity. The region's abundant renewable energy resources provide a competitive advantage for producing green hydrogen. The state of Sarawak has taken a lead on this, which requires large amounts of renewable electricity. As such, there is a need for greater and more concentrated regional collaboration in renewable energy. There's a need for not only regional developmental policies and roadmaps, but also working towards common policies and regulatory frameworks. We also need attractive investment policies and strategies to promote as well as facilitate its adoption in sectors like manufacturing and transportation, as well as reduce costs. This gives us the opportunity to not only address climate change and the energy transition and create new economic opportunities, but also draw closer together as ASEAN. The World Economic Forum has also argued that while developing countries in Asia, Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East are committed to energy transition and have vast renewable energy resources, we lack the finances and technical know-how to develop them fully. The UNFCCC has called for financial assistance from parties with more financial resources to those that are more vulnerable but less wealthy. This recognizes that the capacity of countries to prevent and cope with the consequences of climate change vary enormously. Developing countries, in particular, require substantial financial support to undertake climate action. It is crucial for developed nations to fulfill their commitment to provide $100 billion per year in climate finance as pledged under the UNFCCC. We have seen year in, year out, in one COP after another, where grand promises are made by developed countries about helping the developing world to transition. But when it comes to cashing the check, when we go to the bank, many developing countries have found that it's very difficult to cash the check. The need for equity must not be forgotten. According to ASEAN, and considering the various different definitions across the different countries, there are more than 70 million micro, small, and medium enterprises in the region, the MSMEs. These reportedly account for up to 99% of total establishments in member states, as well as contributing to 85% employment, 44.8% GDP, and 18% of national exports. To me, the MSMEs are hence the frontliners, not only for ASEAN's economy, but also in the journey towards climate action and energy transition. The government, including Malaysia, are of course assisting them in various ways. And yet, many, I am sure, may find the energy transition as well as sustainability demands very daunting. Unlike the big companies, they can't afford to hire chief sustainability officers. We must also make sure that the MSMEs will be able to make the energy transition. It will not be a just one without them. ASEAN ought to stand together on many things, and this includes the need for just climate financing, as I mentioned, and indeed how weighty measures like ESG, climate action, and energy transition are defined. This unity needs to be forged not just at the government-to-government level, but also between civil society and business. We certainly hope to pursue this, especially at international forums like the upcoming COP28 in Dubai, which will be a crucial landmark in the history of the Paris Agreement and where our delegation will be led by Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim. Much, of course, can be said about this topic. The facts are clear. The science is clear. We need to make the economics work, but fundamentally, we need to have the political will, and that's something that the task is on my shoulders and on the government's shoulders to deliver. We sometimes forget, the science is very clear. You can repeat the science again and again. We are feeling the effects now, but often enough, we lose the argument not because we do not have the facts or the science with us, but we lose the argument simply because we are not able to tell a good story to convince the public. That is a challenge, and I think that is a challenge not just for politicians, but for any advocate who wants to convince that we need to do the change. At the end of the day, what is needed is for governments, businesses, non-governmental organizations, and all individuals to embark on a comprehensive transformation in our approach to sustainability. Indeed, in the way we do work, we do business, and we live. We should be forging linkages with our counterparts in ASEAN. The relationship must be consistently be renewed and nourished rather than be taken for granted. Addressing climate change is not a responsibility limited to the present generation alone. I think as we've seen from the speech and presentation by Tan Sri Jeffrey Cheah, it extends to future generations as well. But if we can do the things that are certainly within our grasp in our lifetimes, we can give our children and their children a fighting chance to continue and even win the war. Thank you.